Welcome back to the channel. It's day 10. Day 10, can you believe it already, of November, and the countdown to the Spectrum. And the next game on the list is Ant Attack, released in 1983 by QuizzerLee for £6.95. Also released on the Amstrad, CPC and the Commodore 64 this game. I didn't know there was a version on the Commodore 64 of this game, to be honest. Created by Sandy White and Angela Sutherland. Inspiration for Alien Evolution, Ant Attack, which is Ant Attack, so I don't know why that's on there, Boombot, Crapbot, and Isometric Raycast. Crapbot, my word. And this won a CMVG 1983 Golden Joystick Award. Apparently it was third place in that, and ranked 9 in 1984 Sinclair User Top 50 Spectrum Games Software Classics. Now this game for me was one of my very earliest Spectrum memories. I used to get really terrified of this game, to be honest. I think, well, when I played it, obviously I was about 11 years old, so, you know, I guess it's not as silly as it sounds to get scared by a game like that's got giant ants in it. But it used to be one of them games like, you know, when you started on one side of the city wall and you'd go over into the area where you knew the ants were. You kind of get that nervous anticipation every time you jumped over the wall to begin the game. It's like, it used to scare me a lot, which is why I probably didn't play it as much as I should have done. I've actually played it a few times on emulator since recently, and it is fun to play, very much so, but I guess I didn't appreciate it as much when I was a kid, just because I got a bit too scared. I was like that actually growing up. Even like when we graduated to playing PlayStation games and stuff, I never could play like games like Resident Evil. I played them and I loved them, but I always struggled to stick with them long term because I used to get really scared playing them. It was only fairly recently that I've gone back and finished every single Resident Evil game now, but I hadn't actually finished. I'd finished number 2 and 3, but I'd never finished any of the others until recently. So I guess that's a theme with me, I suppose. I've always been quite an anxious person, and I only got diagnosed in 2010 that I actually had anxiety disorder. Before that, I used to get nervous about things in social situations and stuff like that, but it was never really diagnosed, so I didn't know anything about it. I only really learned what anxiety was in like the late 2000s anyway. So it's, you know, I used to work for the DWP and we used to get benefit claims coming in, and people used to put anxiety on benefit claims, and I used to think, well, what's that all about? You know, what the hell does that mean? We all get anxious, and never realised it was a medical thing really at the time. Anyway, that's a sidetrack. So I guess I always was a bit too nervous to play scary games like this, and for a kid, playing games with giant ants in was pretty scary. I mean, I also struggled when I graduated to the Amiga playing like It Came From the Desert, even though I absolutely loved that game. When the big ants are on the screen, it's terrifying. So maybe I got a thing about ants, who knows? Anyway, we're going to take a look at Crash and stop my stupidity. This review's a little bit confusing because obviously it looks like one page got absolutely soaked in like tobacco or something. The other page was completely clean and lovely and pristine. So I don't know what happened here, but obviously it is a very old review. This magazine's from 1983, so we'll have a look at it. Sandy White is a quiet Scot and a sculptor by trade. His understanding of three-dimensional construction is evident in his game, Ant Attack. Unveiled at the Quicksilver Press show, it raised admiring oohs and ahs from the gathering. According to the press release, Quicksilver was so impressed by the stunning quality of the graphics, they flew Sandy down from Scotland and signed a contract within 24 hours. A patent had been applied for to protect his 3D soft solid routines. Quite simply, Ant Attack contains the most breathtaking 3D graphics yet seen on the Spectrum. As one of our reviewers pointed out, very similar to Zaxxon graphics and quite as good as you can see in an arcade. The idea of the game is to enter the walled city of Antishire, which has rested for 1,000 years in the midst of the great desert inhabited only by the deadly ants who have made it their home, and rescue your girlfriend. Actually, it's a non-sexist program which asks you if you are a boy or a girl. Cute graphics distinguish between the two and make the main figure a hero or a heroine according to taste. You can walk or run around the massive city which exists in space, many times greater than the playing area. You can also jump up and down and climb the walls or stairs. All of this activity is necessary to avoid the giant ants which will attack within moments of you entering. 2 weapons are provided, 20 grenades which may be thrown at varying distances by pressing keys S, D, F or G, and which will either stun or kill an ant, depending on your accuracy. The other weapon is your feet. Jumping up and down furiously on an ant will leave it paralysed and out of the running. Up to 5 ants attack at one time, but others will appear to replace the inactive ones. You can stand being bitten quite a bit, but too many bites will eventually result in loss of life. The graphics are really stunning. The soft solid bit refers to the 3D effect achieved not only with the buildings, which are made up of blocks, hundreds upon hundreds of them, but also with the 2 humans and the ants. If your characters disappear behind a building, you can press any of the 4 keys O, P, Enter or Space, which will give you a view of the same location from another company compass point. The effect is very like a scene in a TV studio where you can look at the action from 4 differently placed cameras. The cutting from view to view occurs instantaneously and without a flicker. The excellence of the 3D is also seen when your characters are surrounded by ants. The individual elements of the picture all merge in the most realistic manner, so much so it's hard to tell who is who at times, and this adds to the difficulty of the game. Before we read the criticism, we'll go to the comments. So it's a keyboard only game, which I think is probably like obvious considering, you know, you've got 4 different keys for one action. You couldn't really replicate that on a joystick, I guess, at the time, with only like a joystick and 1 button. Obviously nowadays with so many buttons on a joystick, you could probably replicate that, but you couldn't do it back then. So it might be possible now to reprogram the joypad to actually play this on a joypad, I would imagine, depending on how many keys you actually have to press within the game, of course. Keyboard play, very positive. Use of colour, varied opinions, but averaged out as good. Graphics, excellent. Sound, good. Skill levels, none. Lives can be bitten 20 times. General rating, very highly recommended. Use of computer, 60%. Graphics, 100%. That's a big swing there, isn't it? Playability, 95%. Getting started, 80%. Addictive quality is 80%. Value for money, 95%. Overall, 85%. I guess the 60% for use of computer dragged that mark way down. On criticism, the animation of the figures must be the best yet seen on the Spectrum. The most serious drawback to enjoying the game is a handful of control keys required. 4 keys for the different views, 4 to throw grenades, 2 keys to rotate left and right, another for forward movement, another for jumping. Makes it 12 in all. They are quite difficult to manipulate. So like I was saying earlier, this is 12 there, so you've got like 4 main buttons, yeah, and you'd have 4 shoulder buttons, so you wouldn't even, well, and you could use, I suppose, if you're using like a PS3 controller, which is, or PS4 sorry controller, which is what I used on the A500 Mini, you use a stick for movement, you might be able to use the D-pad for the cameras and then the rest of the buttons for the grenades and stuff. So it's possible you might be able to play this on a joystick. Just something to think about. It's an extremely good game with plenty of action, but a little difficult to control at first. I found it totally confusing at first with all those keys and no joystick that could possibly help, but it's so wonderful to look at that you're bound to persevere. Yeah, and that's one of the memories I do have of this game. I mean, the sheer terror is the first thing. Being a child trying to play this game, being surrounded by loads of ants and getting bitten, it's like something out of your nightmares, isn't it? But I do remember it originally was quite hard to play at first. If you're sort of person nowadays that plays games with multiple keys, you're probably going to be a lot more proficient at playing it than I or you may have been back in the day. Definitely worth sticking with because it is a wonderful game, wonderful fun, and also like it's like playing one of those old-fashioned movies, isn't it, with the big ants and stuff. You know, it's like playing one of those big horror movies, which is always fun to do, isn't it? So if you've never played this game before, I would imagine most people that have had a ZX Spectrum have played Ant Attack before, but if you haven't for some reason, definitely worth giving a go. But just go into it with that in mind, that, you know, there are a lot of keys, it's going to be confusing at first, but the best thing to do is to give it a go, stick with it. And like I said, there might be a way to program it onto your joypad. If you're using the one that comes with the A500 Mini and the one they're selling the black version for the Spectrum, I don't think that's going to have enough keys on it for you to, enough buttons on it for you to program all the keys on it. I think there's definitely a possibility that if you're using a PS4 controller or something like that with sticks and a D-pad, that you might be able to program that. Let me know in the comments. I know it's going to be after the Spectrum comes out, so once the Spectrum comes out, let me know in the comments if you manage to program it. Maybe you can help some other people out on that one. Okay guys, as ever, thanks for watching. This has been day 10 of Countdown to the Spectrum. We are just 12 days away now. We're almost into single figures. It's hard to believe, I know, but time is marching forwards, and I'm sure time's going to go very quick once the Spectrum comes out as well, because we're all going to be absolutely loving every single day with it, aren't we? Well, touch wood, it hasn't come out yet. I can't sort of say to you it's the best thing ever, because, you know, there could be problems with it. I don't know, but I don't want to think about that. Let's not think about that. Let's just say it's going to be amazing. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.